And let me make this schedule. So I'm Semhar Johannes, and I am a STEM reference and instruction librarian. My contact information is up above, and I teach this version of the STEM literature workshop. I'm here with my colleague, Brianna. I'm gonna let Brianna introduce herself.
Thanks, Simhar. Hi, everyone. My name is Brianna Hughes. I use she, her pronouns. I am the other science librarian. I work with biological sciences, physics, mechanical engineering, and the CSEE department. Glad to be here.
So we get a sense of who's in the room. Can we just take a moment and put in chat our major/department and what year we are? Cybersecurity Masters, welcome. Human Centers, welcome, welcome. Fourth year PhD, congrats. Maybe the light at the end of the tunnel is coming. And I think we already know Leonard. Leonard is bio. Okay, Leonard, what year are you? Your undergrad first year? Oh, wow, congratulations. You are industrious. That's nice. I like that about you. Okay. So today's agenda, we're going to go briefly over what was kind of discussed over the intro session, but just briefly, we're going to go over steps to writing a literature review. We're going to do a demo, and then we're going to end with a checklist that sort of analyzes how to write a literature review from the perspective of a reviewer, which is hopefully what one day you all will become. Okay, so just to make sure that we're all on the same page, a literature review is both a summary of the citation and an evaluation of that citation. Most students get confused and assume that it's just the first part, but it is not. There's two parts to a literature review. It's a summary and an evaluation. So what does that evaluation look like? Because a lot of people assume when you hear evaluation, you think, well, you're putting in your personal perspective, you're putting in your bias. It is not. When I say it is also an evaluation of the research, you are discussing previous research that's been discussed, critiquing, for instance, the methodology. Was there something odd about the sample size? Was the standard deviation too small or too large? You're also evaluating the research to demonstrate, again, where you fit in within academia or within the industry itself. Place yourself. So what is the purpose of a literature review? Other than, I have to, my professor told me to, it's required. There are other reasons to write a literature review. First, get a sense of what is going on within, again, the research/industry/academia. Get an understanding of that topic itself. Learn about that topic. Most importantly, figure out where the holes are. Because once you figure out where the holes are or the missing gap within the literature, you can place yourself there. That is where you can move the needle. That is where you can create new literature, new research. Also, learn about the language, learn about the researchers, and again, place yourself. Does it make sense when I say place yourself? Great. Once you know where the holes are in the literature, in the research, that's where you can place yourself. So that's where you can create new content. Okay, types of literature, and again, I'll make this really brief. There's 3 different types of STEM literature reviews. And so there are actually a lot more than just 3, but for the STEM, we prefer the 3 following types of literature reviews. Methodology, This is where you collect or you select citations based on the methods that are being used in that study. Systematic is where you collect all of the citations on that one topic. And this will result in you having thousands of citations in your paper. And then theoretical is where you select citations based on a topic or a theme. Does that make sense? The three different types of literature reviews for the STEM. In the intro workshop, we go in a greater detail about the three. Okay. With that, we're just going to take a moment to stop and have any questions before we sort of dive into the steps, kind of really go into a little bit greater detail than what we discussed during the intro.
I put a link in the chat for everyone. We do have a workshop about systematic reviews because they are so large in their scope. They kind of deserve their own workshop. So that's coming up at the end of this month, Tuesday, October 28th at 4 o'clock. And like this one, it will be recorded and we can share the recording out afterwards if you're not able to make it live.
I would say for Maria, I think you are the PhD student. I would maybe recommend like paying it, like, giving that one a look. Okay, so let's talk about the steps of writing a literature review. It's 9 steps. I mean, this isn't, I was going to say, this isn't concrete. You can sort of shift things around here or there, but this is what we sort of created and thought of as like a way to sort of go about writing your literature review so you don't feel overwhelmed, you're not stressed, and sort of make the process as smoothly as possible. Okay, so step 1, make a plan. So in terms of why are you writing this, figure out the deadline, figure out what the end product is. And so depending upon the end product, what the literature review would look like is a little different. And so are you writing this because it's required for a grant or a conference or a poster? Whatever the end product is, that will determine what the lit review in some sense will look like and what type of lit review. So if I am required to do a lit review for a poster, and this poster is for ERCAT, which will happen in April on campus. And so obviously it's a poster. Poster, there's not a lot of space. So it doesn't make sense for me to pick the literature review that's referred to as systematic, because systematic is a literature review where you're looking at all of the literature on that one topic. So it makes sense for me to pick maybe the 2 other types of literature review. So knowing what your end product is will help you determine what type of literature review you're doing. Figure out who the target audience is. Is it your professor? Is it a board of reviews? Are you submitting a paper for a journal submission? And again, think about your deadline. If your deadline is the end of the fall semester, it does not make sense for you to do a systematic review. A systematic review takes months, if not closer to a year. So it makes sense then for you to do the 2 other types of literature reviews. So be mindful of how much time you have. And again, that will determine what type of literature review you're doing. And so there are a lot of different tools to kind of help you think kind of this through. And so whether they be mind maps or different like apps, kind of like I said, visualize what you're doing. And so I tend to be a very visual person. And so I actually prefer to just do it by hand and kind of draw this out and sort of like go like draw out like an actual timeline. And like, okay, this is when this is due and the reviewer wants it this, which means I need to give this person 2 weeks. Okay, like, whatever way works for you, but maybe think about visualizing it and using different apps. Next, selecting a topic. This is probably my favorite stage, or one of my favorite stages of a lit review, because this is just fun. This is where I just get to like skim and read, and only read kind of like surface level. So like it's not a lot of commitment. And so how do you select and then refine a topic? And so I recommend that you, for instance, go to the table of content of your favorite journal or the journal within your discipline and just go through and read what are the current submissions. Go through the annual reviews. Go to one of our databases that are just strictly focus on dissertations and thesis, as you can see here in the image. And within the search box, just type in a couple of keywords really relating to your topic. And then again, see what the titles are of, that match those keywords. For this stage, it's low commitment. All you're doing, honestly, is just reading the titles of these various sort of citations. By reading the titles, you get to see what the questions are, what the questions are being asked within your discipline. I mean, like I said, this is just like a fun stage. Okay, now that we have a topic, because we spent some time looking through the various table of content, some of our journals, our conferences. And again, we're just doing low level commitment where it's just reading the titles. And by reading the titles of these various submissions, various poster submissions, various presentation submissions, we're getting a sense of what questions we want to sort of ask. Now we have our thesis question. Next step is to figure out where the literature is located. And so I'm going to focus on sort of both here that we have through our library website or through the library, and also what we have sort of offsite in other places. So in terms of what we have here at UMBC, so if you go to the front page and open up, you'll see a search box. And within that search box, the default setting is the everything catalog. But if you open it up, you'll see the everything catalog and then UMBC catalog. So let me click here. And so here you'll see it. So the everything catalog searches UMBC plus 16 other schools that we are affiliated with. And so being a UMBC student, you have access to the print resources of the 16 other schools that we are affiliated with. So if you see a print resource from another school, from one of the other schools that we are affiliated with, you can have it shipped here to UMBC. So that's one place for you to find content. So this searches UMBC plus 16 other schools. The next catalog is the UMBC library catalog. Now this is just UMBC, both print and electronic. And so I always tell students, if you have the luxury of time, use the everything. If you are short on time, use the UMBC library catalog. The reason why, let me go back to where we were. Okay. The reason why I always tell students when you're working with the front page search box, you want to view this though only as a launching pad, because it searches most of our resources, not all. And even the ones that it is searching, it is only doing a top layer search. So if the everything catalog only has 5 databases and 5 journals that it's searching from all the different schools that we're affiliated with, let me just give you that example. It is only doing 20% of one, 40% of a second one, et cetera, et cetera. It's only doing top layer. That's why you want to view these two resources from the front page, the everything catalog and the UMBC library catalog, as a great place to explore. You want to view it as a great place to, test out, but just as a launching pad. It is the most forgiving of all of our resources, all of our data, like, search boxes. Once you are done with the front page, which you should be, you then want to go to your subject resources. And there are a couple of places where you can go and locate your subject resources. The first place is something referred to as a research LibGuide. This is just where we have the top resources for each discipline. And so we have it grouped by discipline. So let's go to bio. We have Brianna's department. The default page is the list of the top resources of that discipline. You cannot go wrong doing, for instance, bio research within the list that's listed here. That is the research LibGuide. However, the research LibGuide only has the most popular. It doesn't have the full list. If you want access to smaller niche databases or smaller niche journals, you can find that by going directly to the database list or directly to the journal list. So for instance, if I click on the individual database list here, I'm going to see a list of all of the databases, 455. And so I can come here to the top right-hand corner, and let's say that I am unfamiliar with any of the bio databases, but I know I have a topic that's semi-related to health. If I type in health within the search box, all of the databases, so the smaller niche ones, the ones that I probably would not see in the research LibGuide, would show up here. So that's the database, and then the individual journals, it's the same thing. I can come in here and type in JAMA. Most people are familiar with JAMA. Or let's say that I am not familiar with any journals within my discipline, and I know, again, health, something big and generic. And all of the databases, excuse me, all of the journals that relate to the topic of health will come up. Does everyone feel comfortable sort of, with this page? Because there's a lot here. There's a lot of places for you to find literature on our website. Let's move to the next page. So more sources. So this is outside of the library website. And so this includes looking for gray and white literature, looking at conference materials. This is where you can locate standard manuals, government agencies, data set, patent applications, and patent documents are great places for you to find literature. Basically, there's a lot of places, both sort of official and unofficial. I mean, I don't know if I would refer to this as unofficial maybe, but it's not necessarily the traditional citation, but it's just as useful, just as important, and depending upon your discipline. So for instance, if you're from mechanical engineering or if you're chemical engineering, a lot of this content here would be useful. Okay, so now that we know where the literature is, the next thing is to figure out how to search the literature. And so we saw where the databases are located. We saw the front page search box, which is the launching pad. Once you're done with the launching pad, you would go to your research guide. Once you're done with your research guide, if you want to do greater research, more in-depth research, you would go to your individual databases or your individual journals, or go to government agencies, etc. We know where all the places are, where to find literature. The next step is to figure out how to navigate. And so one way is to write a search string. And so all of your databases, your e-journals, the front page search box have a search box and a search platform. And many of these search platforms are engineered for you to search something similar to this, what I have written. So this is a search query, a search question. And like I said, many of your resources require you to do this type of searching. And so you'll see here, I have a link that says search strings. And so it talks about how to build a search query. And so it starts off with the very basic and then slowly transition to using something called keyword searching, Boolean, which many students are familiar with. There's implied Boolean, truncation, wildcard, etc. But most importantly here, I have on the very last slide, which I hope you guys will kind of take a look at after this session, is how to build a search query from scratch, which is probably the most important thing probably on this entire presentation from this secondary presentation. And so here is a basic research question. What types of chemical compounds trigger the majority of food allergies in people? This is a big generic research question. And so the way that I would go about building a search query or testing a database would be the following. I would take all of my keywords and separate them by and, hit search. Do I get results? If I get results, great. Then I can slowly start manipulating my search query. So I would focus on one portion and I would do a search strategy. And so you'll see the search strategy here is putting the star. And then again, I would hit search. Do I still get results? Great. And again, as you can see, I'm slowly manipulating my search string. So I never start off with search string number 6 because I may end up getting 0 results. And it's not because that database doesn't have anything on my topic, because it does. I'm just, creating the wrong search query, or it doesn't like my search query, or it doesn't like one of the strategies that I'm using. And so that's why you have to slowly test your search query. Start off really broad and slowly work your way to a narrow. So you may not end up actually being able to go to number 6. So for instance, you're at search query number 5, you're around 500 results, you're liking them, the first 3 pages are excellent, all the results are wonderful, but you think maybe you can, just tweak it a little bit more. So you tweak it to the 6th search string and you end up with only 40. So you go from 500 results to 40. Obviously, that should clue you in. You have to, use some discretion. That's just too narrow. I'm probably losing a lot of great citations. So you may only have to be able to go to number 5. That's probably where you're going to stop. Okay. But this is the first type of sort of search strategy that you can utilize. And so this is where you build a search query within the search box. And here is an example. And you'll see again the link that explains what the quotes mean, what the star means. And then again, the very last page on this presentation here link is where I'm showing you how to build a search string from scratch. The second type of way to look for literature is referred to as it can be referred to as like reference tracking or notes tracking, footnote tracking, etc. This is where you locate a great article. You go all the way to the bottom to its references, and then you read through the references and you locate or you identify whichever reference you like. So let's say I like reference number 1, number 4, and number 6. So for number 1, I'm going to identify where is the source. Here it is. This requires me to be able to read a citation. And once I'm able to read the citation, so it tells me what is the name of the journal, what's the year, what's the issue number, what's the page number. And once I once I'm able to finally figure out what the citation means, I'll go to the individual journal. and locate it. So this is referred to as, again, reference tracking or footnote tracking. This is a really popular way of searching. Many of your faculty do this, where, you know, they're reading through their various citations that come through, and then they go to the very last page and they start identifying which of the citations interest them. They circle, they highlight, and then they track it down. And so I'm gonna tell you in a second why I have Web of Science here highlighted. The third way to search for literature is referred to as citation tracking. So this means that I go to a website called Web of Science, and Web of Science tells me how often a particular article has been cited in peer-reviewed places. And so I'm going to click on Web of Science. And so you'll see it's taking me to the UMBC page, and I'm going to see a link to Web of Science. Web of Science is a premier STEM resource. It doesn't matter what type of STEM literature you're doing, you're always going to be using it. And so you type in, you know, a keyword or an author or whatever interests you. So I'm going to go back to meeting selection and Watts. Okay, so I'm going to locate an article. Here's one that has two numbers on the right-hand side, a top number and a bottom number. The top number tells me how often my article has been cited. So that is what I'm looking for. This tells me this article has been cited 2 times in peer-reviewed places. If I click on that number, here they are. The assumption is that those 2 other people that cited my article probably have a topic really similar to mine. And so here they are, and here is the way that I can access them. That is what it's referred to as citation tracking. Now, you remember, let me move this over here to the right left-hand side. I said the second option was reference tracking, which is sort of like backward tracking, where we go all the way to the bottom of an article and we identify which citation interests us. Well, okay, so here's the article that I liked. This bottom number is the number of references in my article. If I click on that number, 47, here they are. So this is just sort of an easier way for me to do footnote tracking or reference tracking. And so again, if I want to read any of them, if we have access to them, you'll see a link. So let me just reiterate. There is the building a search query option of searching for literature. There is the reference or footnote tracking, which is where you go all the way to the bottom of an article or citation and identify which citation you're interested in and you track it down. And then there's the citation tracking. This is where you identify, you find an article through Web of Science, and then you see if it's been cited. And if it's been cited, that means it's been cited in a peer-reviewed place. And then you just see the other people that cited it, because the assumption is they probably have a topic really similar to yours. And then the last way, make a consultation with Brianna or myself. Research consultation is a normal part of our job. We do them quite often. So whether it's with our faculty, with our students, or with our staff in the STEM departments, like I said, normal part, we work with students, the same students over a long period of time. So feel free to contact us. Okay, questions so far? Okay. Now that we have all of our literature, and depending upon whether we're doing a systematic, which is all of the citation on one topic, or we're doing a theoretical or a methodological type of literature review, we have all of this citation. We now need to start evaluating it. And we have to use various criteria. And so assess, is the author credible? Does it have a list of citations? Is it a research or a review article? Research is primary, review is secondary. When you are citing in your papers, your reviewers, your faculty prefer you to have a research article rather than a review article. Who is the audience for? Is it academic? Is it propaganda? Is it, what is the language like? Timeliness. This is a big issue, particularly, for instance, in the IS department or in the health, like, something that's pre-medical. Okay. Another thing that you need to do, well, you should do simultaneously, is when you are assessing these various citations, view it in sort of like stages. You have initial and then you have secondary. Initial, just sort of do surface level. Title, abstract. Does anything pop off? Is there a red flag? You see a red flag, maybe put it aside. Low, this is considered, like I said, initial screening. Second screening is where you do actually the in-depth. This is where you actually do read the article. And you are also examining simultaneously the inclusion and exclusion criteria. And so obviously the question is, well, what's inclusion and exclusion criteria? You are only including citations in your paper that meet a certain criteria. So you're only looking at citations that include a certain demographic. So for instance, it may be young adults, and that it may be clinical, it may be cross-sectional. You may be only looking at studies that are retrospective, and you're only looking at people from, North America. What are your inclusions? Also, what are your exclusions? You're not looking at, you're not going to accept any citations that are A, B, or C. There's a lot that you're doing when you're evaluating. This is actually, this is a hard stage. So you're doing first screening and second screening. You're evaluating, and you're evaluating on terms of, biasness, timeliness, or is it research versus review article? But then you're also evaluating in terms of inclusion and exclusion. There's a lot happening here. Okay. You have to record all of this. And so how do you record this in a way that you're not feeling overwhelmed? And that's logical. And so you'll see here, I have it hyperlinked. And so it always helps to have things sort of logical, and Excel sheet helps. And so take the citation, copy and paste the abstract, indicate the key components, strengths. Again, the article tells you that itself. Limitations, the article tells you that itself. And then anything that sort of how it's relevant to your lit review. And then there's other aspects here that may or may not necessarily be relevant to you, but just something for you to consider. But you do need to record because you are working with so many citations. Okay. When to stop. And so one thing that I always like to recommend to students to do at the beginning of their research is that you want to establish alerts. You want to establish all of the passive ways to do research. And so there's active, which we just talked about, all the different ways, like creating a search query, actively going into the databases, actively going into the journals. And you can also do passive. And you cannot just rely on passive. And so passive is sort of like secondary. So additional, supplementary, complementary, etc. So you establish alerts. So your databases in your journals allow you to establish alerts on, for instance, authors, keywords, topics, etc. You can also save searches. And you can also save and create RSS feed. This is, again, a way to keep current. And I would actually really recommend this to, is Maria still here? Maria is gone. But for students who are going to be doing long-term research over a long period of time, I would recommend, particularly for you all, to create or establish passive research, this type of sort of keeping current, doing the passive research. Just establish this at the very beginning of your sort of research process. When to stop, because you do have to stop. When you're seeing the reoccurring authors, you're seeing the reoccurring methods, reoccurring topics, reoccurring themes, like you're not getting anything new out of it. So for instance, if you are doing the type of study that's methodological, where it's based on the methods and you're seeing the same methods over and over again, you're not getting any new methods brought up or discussed, then that's a good point to stop. Same thing if you're doing theoretical, and which is where you are basing your literature review on a particular theme or topic, and you're not seeing any new themes or any new topics discussed, that's a good point to stop. Okay, how do you organize this? Once you have all of the citations that you feel comfortable about including. And so you've done your eliminations, you've determined what your inclusions are, and you've determined what your exclusions are. You figured out which articles you want to keep. Now that you've determined these are all the citations that you want to keep, you need to organize it. And so I always tell students, this is not the time to be innovative. This is not the time to be on vanguard. You want to make this as easy as possible for your readers. And your readers are comfortable with these 3 different types. This is what they're familiar with. And so give them what they're familiar with. And so they're familiar with chronological, thematic, or methodological. So chronological, this is where you organize the citations based on publication date. So you can do newest to oldest or oldest to newest, whichever way suits you. You could also do it in a slightly modified way. And so you can say that all of your citations range from the date, the year 2000 to current, so 2025. And so you say in the first paragraph in your lit review, you're only looking at the citations that were published from the year 2000 to 2005. Then what were the common themes or trends in those citations? Then in the next paragraph, you're looking at all of the citations that were published from 2006 to 2010. And then what were the common themes that were published, et cetera, et cetera. Thematic is where you organize your lit review based on a topic or theme. So you notice after reading all of your citations that there were 4 main themes that were reoccurring. So you're going to organize your lit review based on those 4 main themes. So the first paragraph will be about theme 1, and theme 1 includes citation number 1, 2, and 6. Paragraph 2 is about theme B or theme 2, whatever, and it includes citations 10, 11, and 14, etc., etc. You organize this by themes, and all of the citations that have theme 1 go in that paragraph. All the citations that have theme 2 go in that paragraph, etc., etc. And then last, by method. You organize this by the methods discussed. And so if after reading all of the citations, you notice that there are 5 main themes that are discussed, then again, that's how you organize your lit review. So paragraph 1 of the lit review will discuss method number 1, and all of the citations that involve method number 1 will be listed here. Paragraph number 2 will discuss method number 2, and all of the citations that involve method number 2 will be involved here, etc., etc. Questions so far? Okay, so let's move on. So, if you are planning to do, for instance, systematic literature review or a literature review that will involve, you're looking at citations like 50, 40, or some number that's up there or higher, I would recommend that you utilize a citation software. We here at UMBC, we recommend 2 citation software, Zotero and EndNote. We have workshops that are dedicated to teaching students how to utilize them. There's also a link here. I'm trying to think of anything else. Okay. So instead of exploring our website, I do want us first to look at a particular handout. Okay, so I have a checklist listed here in our presentation, and this checklist goes over what a reviewer thinks about when they are reading someone's lit review. And so it's from the perspective of a reviewer. So you want to use this as a way to be, be critical about your own writing and to ensure that the final lit review that you submit meets all of the criteria. So if you click on the link, okay, and so you'll see it divided into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections. And so it starts with the intro. Now, ask yourself, once you have the, you're at the final stage, the final draft of your lit review, take a moment and review your lit review by asking yourself, does it state the purpose? Does it use appropriate language? Is it organized? Does it make sense, the organization? Are there headings? Is there appropriate transition from one section to another? The presentations of studies being reviewed. Does the presentation of the studies within this selection include storyline? Is the connection between each piece of literature made explicit? When an item of literature is introduced, is it summarized for the reader? Is the author critical about each piece of literature? Here's the key thing. Does the author go beyond summarizing the studies? Is there evidence of analysis and critique of individual studies? Is there evidence of analysis and synthesis across the studies? Because remember, from the very top of this presentation, a lit review is both a summary and an evaluation. There is an evaluation. And an evaluation is where you're critiquing. And again, the critiques can be about the sample size, the standard of deviation, the inclusion or exclusion, etc. And then it ends with conclusion of the review. Does the author provide summary and conclusion that pulls together the entire review? Does the author identify the contribution made by the review efforts? And does the author make suggestion for research that needs to be conducted in the future? This is usually a great gateway to discuss your research, because you should know after reading the literature where the gap is. And so it usually makes sense that the research that you're introducing, which is yours, fills in the gap where the research is going. And that is you. Okay, so let me take you over to the library website. Actually, we have only maybe 9 more minutes, so maybe it's better to just allow you guys time to ask me questions. Do you have any questions? I know this is a lot of information thrown your way. Are you guys feeling a little bit more comfortable and confident about doing a lit review? Well, okay, if you guys are, let me. You need to try it out. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. So I'm going to put here in chat. We're just doing a quick little survey to kind of figure out the best way to get help from a librarian. It's only 2 questions. But if you guys don't have any questions for me, I'm going to put in chat my contact information. And I'm going to also mention again, if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to contact me. I will be sending a copy of the recording and a copy of the slides tomorrow. So keep that, keep a lookout for that. And with that, I'm going to say stop sharing. And I'm going to say stop recording. Did I stop recording? Nope, I'm sorry.